enemy. Think that it was meant to be. Living in a time where disease is on every screen. I won't let them fester me. I know most are festering negativity.
So I was reading your bio on your website. Okay. So your Harrison Barron website. Yep. And it was cool because like I feel like you hit it on the mark when it comes to About Us. Well, this case about me. I felt like I was reading the story, you know. And it was very captivating, man. You have an interesting background. You know, you've gone through some stuff, you've overcame it, and as I read that, I'm like, this is perfect. You know, this is someone who's conquered the challenges of life, who's really been able to make impact and is further growing. You know, so
thanks, man. Appreciate it. Actually, believe it or not, a customer referred me to go make that. So I take little to no credit. He was the one that, you know, he basically told me, hey, I think you should go do, you know, you should go make a good about, you know, a bio area. And I said, you know what, you know, it was just one of those things I knew that I needed to. And I've had, I've had a fair amount of people tell me like, hey, I think, you know, it's probably worth something you should probably invest some time in. And I did finally. But it took a lot of convincing. I just wanted, you know, I had like a super generic bio and people, you know, then people were like, you know, I didn't know you had a house fire. I didn't know you did this. I didn't know you had dogs. And, you know, who knows if my dogs are going to join us on the show, but we may get a guest appearance here. But, you know, it literally all came from a customer. A customer of mine was like, hey, you know, I really think that you should bump up your bio a little bit. You just have a really interesting story. And I said, you know, fine, you know, I'll write one. And I had kind of toyed around with the idea for a while before that. And I was like, you know what? And then finally some additional encouragement helped push it over the edge.
So what was that additional encouragement? Because I felt that what you said about having a hard time putting in a bio that's detailed as this is here. And I don't know if that's just the way us men are, or, you know, it's just we might not be very proud of our past or whatever it is that prevents us from really putting ourselves out there. But in your case, like I read this, man, I read that and I felt like I read an inspiring story. You know, it was from a house fire, you know, to being an RV, and a variety of other stuff. Yeah, and even these I can relate to, which I'll go into my first question shortly. But man, I was pumped, man, after I read that. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it was, you know, it just, it's a lot. I think a lot of people, and I'm going to bring business into this too. And this goes with like a lot of life. I think, people know for the most part what they're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to go work out. We're supposed to get exercise. We're supposed to go be outside, you know, a little while every day. And I think people also overcomplicate a lot of things in life, but, we know that we are supposed to eat a balanced diet, right? And preferably fresh. You know, they always say shop the outside of the supermarket. We all know, what we're supposed to do in business, right? There are times when we don't, right? And then we go look for those answers. But for the most part, we know what we're supposed to do. We just never do it. And it's one of those things where we just need to, you know, listen to the voice that says like, hey, go do this, right? Hey, I'm playing video games too long. I should probably stop playing video games for the day. Or, you know, the list goes on and on, right? Like if you're doing something a lot and it's not bettering you every single time you do it, then you need to, we know it, right? It's very rare that somebody, and look, I'll be the first one to admit, I get caught up in video games too. I'll sit down, you know, 9 hours later, I'm like, I can't believe I spent this much time on video games, right? Or whatever it is. You know, I was a volunteer fireman for 10 years. You know, sometimes you're like, oh my God, I've been at the firehouse for 7 hours now. Like, I got to go get things done for the day. My car's a perfect example. I just, you know, I found out I knew it was coming up for like some service work. And of course, I'm like, all right, let me go do like a little 360 of the car. I'm like front brakes, back brakes, rotors, oil change. I'm like, let me just do the oil, the air filters too. Like we all know that it needs to be done, right? It's just whether or not you're actually going to do those things. And that, and to make a long story into a longer story, but that was kind of what happened with the bio is I was like, I know I have an interesting past. I literally started my own podcast, you know, and my buddy in a closet smaller than the room I'm in now, at my old employer, and but I knew it was something I wanted to do, and I knew it was something that, you know, might turn into something, and it did. It helped me launch my business. Hence, you know, you give me kudos on the microphone and stuff like that. But I learned a lot.
man.
I learned a lot about how to talk to people and audio. And we all know what we're supposed to do, and it's just whether or not you're going to actually go do it or not. And that's really, I think, what makes a lot of it, you know, either easy for people or difficult for people or anything of that nature.
You know, I want to unpack that a little bit more too, because, you know, knowing what you need to do and doing it, and it could go like I've had the same issue. I just got a PC sometime late last year, and there's so many games on there. I mean, I could be on there for 4 hours, but it feels like 5 minutes. I'm like, oh,
Sure.
well, I should really step away and stop doing that. But the seeing the acknowledging something and going and actually do it, you know, this year I've been very intentional about that, because I feel like a lot of us do struggle with that.
Sure.
And when I mean intentional about it could be the smallest thing. Like I'll walk somewhere, and if I see a piece of paper, sometimes my mind's like, oh, I'll come back for it later. But you know, switching those gears to no, I'm gonna pick it up right now. So the tiniest of things, because that rolls over to the bigger parts of your life as well.
I agree, and you know, it's look, and not everybody's superhuman, right? Like I'm just a normal guy, just like everybody else, right? You know, I just tried it. You know, even this morning, right? I was just taking a shower before this, getting ready for this thing, and I was like thinking, I'm like, all right, I know I could do like 3 things today. I can go do client work, I can build out automations for my business, or I can go play video games, right? It's Friday. I have a pretty light load for Friday. I have a couple meetings later today, but I'm like, I have a nice solid 2-hour gap, right? So I know what I need to do, right? I need to do. There's 2 clearly important things: client work, which is the most important, right? And then business automations, which is the second most important. And then video games, which is not important at all. So it just depends on. I know what I need to do. I know what the right thing to do is. It's just whether or not I'm going to do it or not do it, right? And that's really what it just comes down to. So when I wrote that bio, I knew I had to do a bio. Like people just. I take advice from people. I think people give genuinely good advice. They have the best intentions. And when people actually take advice, I think they're usually pleasantly surprised, even though the advice might not be what they want to hear. You know, I don't want to go to the gym, but hey, you know, people tell me I got to go to the gym. I'm going to the gym again. Like I'm getting back, you know, getting back into it.
That's awesome.
It's just, thanks. It's just, we got to listen to like what we know is to do, you know, to do the right thing. And then there's also times where you got to like, hey, there's times I carve out my calendar where I'm like, I just need a mental break. Like nobody's booking me for these next 2 hours. I just want to relax. I either am going to go lay down with the dogs. Maybe I'll go for a walk. I'll get a fresh cup of coffee, play some video games, whatever it is in the middle of the day, because I know that I'm building that in. And as long as the other hours of the day that I'm not designating to relaxing are effective hours in my day.
Yeah. And I like that you do that. The you know, well, there's 2 things there. One, I want to start off with the blocking out of the calendar for more of like the mental rest, right? That's so important. Sometimes, you know, well, a lot of times high performers like yourself can get so caught up in the loop of doing work that it will lead to some sort of burnout, right? And having that little time, even, you know, I worked at a construction company. And the guy I worked at, I saw him one time just walking around the block. I'm like, what is this man doing? There's so much going on. And I asked him, and he said, you know, when things get way too crazy, he called it zero gravity thinking, where he'll take some time to take a walk, you know, really process what's going on, really just check himself, and then come back, you know, ready to execute whatever plan he came up with within that time. Very, 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 very important. The second thing you mentioned too, that I genuinely believe all listeners, you know, some might be struggling with and should know, with taking advice. You know, sometimes I believe that most people, when they give advice, they come from the good place of their heart. And if they, you know, if you're getting something, you should acknowledge it just to see what it is, because not all advice is good advice, right? But within that advice that's given, there can be something that does change your life. Simple one for me, and you might have struggled with this, asking for help. That was probably the worst thing for me to do. You need help? Nah, man, I'm good. I got this. Mind you, have like 10 things on my back, arms filled. I'm walking on my knees trying to get over to the next destination. But then I've learned to ask for help, and it's been the biggest game changer I've had in anything I do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really forget to ask for help. My parents always made the joke of, Harrison, you never do anything alone. And that might have come from the Boy Scout, the Boy Scouts of just, hey, there's always people standing around doing nothing. You might as well keep them occupied, right? But especially now I moved 700 miles away from where I originally grew up, so a lot of my friends and family are over there. But if my one buddy Billy, shout out to him, he might listen to this podcast. He's a big podcaster, but he's like, Harry, he's like, I know that you don't know what you're doing on a lot of stuff, right? I'm very technical as far as computers go, but like physical labor, I am the muscle. I am not the brain behind any of it. If he's an electrician, super cool dude, dear friend of mine. But he's like, if I call you, you always show up, or at least you'll do everything you can to show up. And he's like, that means more to me than somebody who is an expert in something that wants to be very particular about it. And I was like, look, I try to pay it forward as much as I can. I would want, do others what you would want done to yourself, right? So if I can, if I can help out and I'm free, I'll, what's it going to cost? It's going to cost a little bit of time, maybe a little bit of money most of the time. Like maybe it's a couple bucks, maybe it's some gas, right? But like realistically, in the grand scheme of things, it's like nothing. There's really zero cost to doing it. But at the same time, right? Now I have a house. If I have an issue, I'm calling Billy. Like, hey, Billy, you got a few minutes here? I know that you're super busy. He's got, I think he now has a baby, or the baby's due very, very soon. But if I have an issue, I get to call him up. I've paid it forward, and I, on Long Island, when I go up there, I'm going to make it a point to make sure I go see him, and I try to see all my friends. But it's so simple to just pay it forward, and then when you need actual help, just be like, hey guys, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm relying on your expertise. And I tell people, I'm like, either I want a favor, I want you to show me how to do it or teach me how to do it. Or if this is so far into my wheelhouse, I will happily pay you to take care of it, because I do believe that people should be compensated for their time. And if they're not going to teach me how to do it or guide me along doing it, then I would rather just pay somebody to be the expert, and then I can not have to worry about it. And that's totally fine too. I think a lot of people forget. People are very multifaceted. It's not a very linear, hey, they're either going to help you or not help you. It takes 2 minutes to help, or if he comes over and he's like, hey man, this is way out of your scope of work, like it would be dangerous for you to do this. I can do it for you if you want. It's going to take me a long time. This is not something I can do on a favor. No worries, let me know, right? I would expect to pay you whatever you're and I would hope that you're going to do a good job, and I'm going to pay you a good salary for a good amount of money to do what needs to be done. I think that that's huge too. And just letting people know, like, somebody needs a website, hey, I can do a little bit for you for free, but anything over that, we got to talk about some kind of compensation here. You're a friend of mine, I want to give you a friends and family discount, but there's got to be some point where it's not, this is no longer a favor. This is a lot of work on my end.
Yeah, of course. And you know what I have found about that? And it's good thinking to be like that. A lot of us, and I'm very, very guilty of that. We find ourselves in a place where we give away more than we need to, and ultimately it becomes like a burden on us, right? So like, for example, a website, I could put together a website and then end up going down the rabbit hole, building an entire website, taking me away from other things I need to be doing that will help ultimately take care of home or anywhere else, right? Really putting your foot down. It's like, hey, I don't mind helping. I'm here. I'm gonna show up, because that's very important. It's always to show up for those who will show up for you. And I'm gonna do this, but I need you to also contribute on your part as well. And that really does change the dynamic of a relationship. I mean, most of the people that I associate with myself now, I always joke with them. It's like I worked with a lot of Europeans when I lived in New York, and they're very like the type to show up. They're very much the type, from my experience, where if they go to your home, they're never empty-handed. And there's that kind of love, fighting over. Me and my boy will call it, hey, look, we're gonna have another Canadian fight of who's gonna pay the bill, So we do that, and it's huge, man. Because when you have those type of relationships that are like that, like those that you just stated, I think it carries a way bigger impact on your life and the life of others as well.
Yeah, no, I thoroughly agree. It's, people just put too much weight, too much stress on things.
Yeah.
we're nobody, I tell my girl, now fiance, but I tell her two things that drive her crazy.
Congrats,
right?
dude.
Thank you.
Wow.
This is life. Nobody
Yeah.
gets out alive, right? So we're only here for a short time.
Yeah.
Why not enjoy the whole time, right? There's no need to have undue stress on yourself for the most part ever, right? I know that some people handle stress differently. You can't take it with you when you're gone. And the best part, I have another buddy of mine who definitely has a bit of anxiety, and he's like, yeah, but what about? I'm like, dude, the best part about tomorrow is you don't know what's going to happen. And that's the most exciting thing in the world. He's like, I don't think that's exciting. I like to know exactly. I'm like, no. You're thinking about it all wrong. That's the best part is you get tomorrow could be tremendous. You could get on a plane and be in another country tomorrow afternoon and change your world completely in a matter of a couple hours, right?
Yeah.
That is the beauty of what we live in today. And a lot of people put too little emphasis on how great it is that we don't do we are not machines. We're not made to do the exact same thing every day, every hour of every day, over and over and over and over again.
It's crazy that you say that, because that was one of my biggest struggles, was focusing too much on tomorrow, the next day, and the day after. And what really helped me actually change that, because I was just talking to my wife about this yesterday. I'm in the whole world. I'm one of those advocates. I believe psilocybin have a place with people with PTSD, depression. I'm not sure if you know psilocybins are, but in the places where people deal with depression, vertigo. So a long time ago, I've tested it for myself, and one of the things that came to mind there was it was like a self-acknowledgement of being stuck in the next day and the following and the day after, and it was giving me so much anxiety. It was just driving me insane, and it got to a point where I sat there and I thoroughly had to look into myself and say, hey, you know what? Next hour from here, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. Live in that very moment that's now. And upon that reflected so many things that where I'm asleep, 2 a.m, phone call comes in, changes the course of everything. All your plans for the next day, the day after, all that gets smashed up, changed up, and stuff. So it's like, living in the now is huge, because nobody needs that stress. Now, talking about stress, I mean, I was reading your bio, and you've stated it here already. Your house caught on fire, which, man, I know that can be rough. I've known people who lose their homes like that. And it's not easy whatsoever. Yeah, despite that your house went on fire, you still pushed through, and you're fine. Now you're in the position you're in. You have a home now, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Back in the house that went on fire.
Okay, so now you're back in the house that was on fire, doing your podcast, which has over 100,000 downloads from what I've read there, maybe more by now. And you're creating the impact that you're creating. What are some of the mindset things that helped you push through those moments to get to where you're at now?
Yeah. So the house fire was, we lost 2 of our dogs in the house fire.
Oh man, sorry.
That was the worst part about it. Other than that, minus the dogs, it's just, are we allowed to curse on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just shit, right? Like, it's all just shit. You buy a house for your shit, right? Like, people get way too obsessed about like what they own and how they own it, right? And it just blows my mind. There was a good movie or a Netflix special, whatever you want to call it, called I think it's called Minimalism. It's great. It's all about them like getting rid of stuff, and now I didn't really get rid of all that much stuff afterwards, but I really don't have much of an attachment to just about everything that I own. If my dogs weren't in the house that night, I would have grabbed some popcorn, like whatever. It is what it is. It's just shit. It's all just shit. And people get really just, there's sentimental shit, but it's shit. It's not, there's plenty of times to have, go down memory lane. We all have these little demonic devices, cell phones, for those of you that are listening, right? If it's sentimental to you, put it in the cloud, right? Because for the most part, you're going to pick something up. I don't know what it is. I'm just trying to think of something. I'm trying to find some, like camera, right? Okay. Yeah. I have multiple nice cameras, but this is a very nice camera. It's just a camera. Like, I get it. But when you, the camera, and I'm just using the camera because it just happens to be on my desk, but when you look at that sentimental thing, what you're really doing is just triggering a memory. Otherwise, and the reason why you know this is because if I gave this camera to somebody else, it would just have the monetary value that they could either produce with it or what it's worth, right?
Yeah.
It only has value to you, and that's, sentimental. And a lot of people get really attached to sentimental stuff. And if you are really, really that worried about it, I would recommend first get Simply Safe. I don't want anyone's house to go on fire. And if it does, it's one thing that we were thinking about getting right before the fire. And literally, it was the first thing that we got after we got back in the house. But we had people coming over the next day, and there's more to that story, but I've never really kind of told it in depth because I usually bawl my eyes out. But just if it's really that sentimental to you, it's just the memory of it. Take a picture of it. Get a tattoo so it's permanent. Do something where at least you could go get that information. Yes. Do you have to work on the cloud? Of course you have to work on the cloud. Do you have to be worried about it potentially going missing? Of course you have to be worried about it potentially missing. But if it really means that much to you, get a scrapbook. Go get a fireproof safe. They're a couple $100 and take the pictures and put that super sentimental stuff in that safe. So that way, if there is a house fire or something like that, you don't have to worry about anything happening. But for the most part, people just put too much of an emphasis on shit. I didn't have a single customer give me a hard time about my house going on fire, right? People were like, hey, I haven't heard from you. Is everything okay? My house went on fire. Oh my God, take as long as you need. That was it. I think people are way more understanding than everybody's ever imagined. I think people beat themselves up over too much stuff, and people are just too attached to shit. And we need to, when you remove that thought of I'm constantly attached to these physical objects. Dogs, different story. They are like kids. I don't have kids yet, but they are my kids. Very, very different. But other than that, it's just shit. A dog makes you feel a certain way. They're going to cuddle up against you. They might sleep on you, make you comfortable, all night. Uncomfortable all night.
Like a kid.
But it's just like, it's a kid, right? It's our version of a kid, and that is what it is. There's no need to stress over it. It's just stuff. And more than likely, you could probably go get something comparable. Other than that, it's just a house fire. I'm glad we weren't home. We did have smoke detectors. They were going off. We would have gotten out of the house. I would have probably put the fire out had I been home. But other than that, it is what it is. It's just stuff. You buy a house. People buy big houses so they can buy more stuff. That's all it is. The happiest people have small houses, low bills, very family centric. They're the happiest people 10 out of 10 times. So stop being so attached to stuff and start being attached to, either how something makes you feel or, the bonds and relationships you build with people over time, because I think that is way more worth it.
That's such an interesting mindset to have, because I know, like you mentioned, so at that time you were a business owner already, right?
Yep.
You had your clients, and your clients thankfully were very receptive to what was going on there. I know that most people, even me a couple of years ago, if I was in your shoes, in your situation, we'll ball up. We'll ball up. We'll, go down a rabbit hole of depression, maybe even anger or whatever it is, in a bad place. We won't go to a good place. We'll go to a very bad, dark place. From what I'm hearing here, you described that, of course, I imagine there's got to be some dark place that you went there, but for the most part, you've handled it outside of the puppies. You've handled it pretty well, and we're able to recover from that, right? Did I hit that right, or am I off on that?
No, I mean, like, I didn't. I guess because of my past, I never really got. I mean, I got sad, right? Yeah. I would say the general standard for people is you're allowed to be upset and sad for 2 weeks. Anything more than that is, give or take, I'm sure a little bit for some people, but if you're holding on to things for weeks and weeks and weeks, like, there's nothing I can do about my dogs. I would trade everything back for my dogs in a heartbeat right now. Yeah. And once you understand that, like, just like I was talking about my buddy, the best part about tomorrow The best part about later today is I don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, I might get a phone call from a buddy of mine saying, hey, let's go out and drink some beers. Great. That is amazing, right? Or I might just get a phone call from a buddy saying, hey, we're making dinner. Come on over. Great. We're going to play disc golf. Great. Like, that's the most amazing part about life is there's so much you could do. There's, especially in today's day and age, there's so much you could do. There's so many ways to have fun. There's so many ways to enjoy yourself. Yeah, the dogs suck for sure. Minus the dogs, I probably wouldn't have lost an ounce of sleep. Yeah, you lose a bunch of shit, but like, it's just shit. And we made the best out of it. We lived in an RV for 9 months in our backyard. We worked on the house. We worked on the property. We did quite a bit in that time period and tried to set ourselves up for a better future. And that's it. And it goes back to what I was saying even earlier. We know what we have to do. I have tenants in my house right now who we took some of the extra money that we had and we put into an Airbnb downstairs. We have tenants with us now, and I'm 30 years old. I don't have a mortgage currently. Somebody else is paying my mortgage for me. We have an RV in our backyard. We're going to rent out that RV, and we're going to set ourselves up for a better financial future down the road. Now, is that what most people will do? Absolutely not. Most people are probably not as crazy as we are to live in an RV for 9 months and do what what we wanted to do. But we knew that was the right thing for us to set us up for a financially free future down the road, right? I want to be, I'm 30 now. I want to be retired in 10 years.
Yeah. That
is my goal. So every single day, and look, I'm not a superhuman. I procrastinate too. So if anyone thinks like, oh my God, this dude just is an animal, like, no, I'm just like you guys. I just know that in my head, there's either play video games and dick around or be productive and move forward in the right direction, right? So as long as I know that being productive and move forward in the right direction outweighs being unproductive and playing video games more than 50% of the time, I'm probably doing better off than most people. And that's all I look at it as. It doesn't have to be every single time, right? I enjoy having fun. I like to put things off. I like the pressure of procrastinating. I don't know why, but if I didn't, I wouldn't procrastinate. But it's just, as long as it wins 50% of the time. So out of the 7 days a week, we'll call it 5 business days. As long as 3 of those days I do more work than play video games, we're moving in the right direction. And that is all I care about.
That's all powerful, man. And out of all the things you shared there, one thing that really, really stood with me is just like, you kept going, like everything else is shit, the materialistic stuff and all that. And then on top of that, just the mindset that you had, that you explained you had to move forward. If you pass 2 weeks, something else needs to be done at that point. Those things are huge, because like I'm a very explosive person, or I've been an explosive person. I've been through traumas in my life that sparked certain parts of me where if something happens, it's like a fight or flight kind of deal, right? Recently, matter of fact, I was an operations manager for a multi-location firm, and a sudden separation has come to there, right? So I got 2 kids I provide for, a wife I provide for, and everything just came to a sudden end at that moment. 2 reactions could happen, and this is like what you were saying. I'm like, man, I'm grateful that I'm holding on, and that he's saying this because it reassures me of like my personal experience of what's going on, and there's others who are listening that are probably dealing with the same thing. You can ball up, go play video games, watch movies, hit up Netflix, and just cry it out when you're going through something, or you can just really accept that whatever happened. It's nothing you're gonna do to go back if you could, because you can't go back in time. What you got to do now is fix it. What you got to fix now in the moment, and just work on that. Because, I told a friend of mine texted me, like, bro, I'm proud of the way you're handling everything. Very humble. You're very calm. My wife has told me the same thing. And my response is simple. Dude, being depressed, crying, and sad is just is more expensive than actually going out there and doing something about it, And that's a mindset that I wish people would really grasp on. And just realize, so materialistic stuff, does it suck to lose it? Yeah, I have stuff that I never would have thought I had since I was a kid, coming up where I came from. And I have it, and I love them. But, if I was to lose them tomorrow, as long as I have my family and my pup, I'm good, And like you were mentioning, we get so caught up on the materialistic stuff, and especially a lot of people who came from nothing. it's just material, man. It's not worth it. Focus on building your future. If something, God forbid, something's to happen, life happens. Overcome that. Don't get caught up on the stuff that you had, sentimental value to, right? So yeah, no, that was a man. I tell you what, Harrison, that's a powerful message. Me personally, I'm sitting in this chair, just like shaking my foot, like, all right, I'm ready to take off right after this again, because woo, it's powerful, man.
It's cool. It's just people just put a lot of stress on stuff that really doesn't need to be stressful.
Yeah.
There's just I get why, but like for the most part, nothing really matters all that much.
Yeah.
It just is. It's crazy to me to see people that stress a lot over stuff that really doesn't matter. I don't know why people do, and I get it. Like everybody's got their own mental battles to fight, but freaking out, first of all, panicking solves nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the number one. Number two is, I'm a business owner, so like if a client's pissed, there's nothing money can't solve, right? It's either I'm going to give them more money or they're going to pay me more money, right?
Yeah.
So if they're not getting the amount of either leads or traffic or whatever it is, right, then I need more money. But if I failed to deliver on what I told them I would deliver on, then I need to give them back some money. It is rare that time is the and look, everybody knows that there is going to be a time commitment on certain things, but it just makes no sense when people get really hung up on stuff, when it doesn't really need to be. And just that simple mentality alone is the best thing that you can do. And people are so afraid of certain things. Nobody's coming after you with a gun. Nobody's threatening you. The worst that happens is you're going to get fired.
Mm-hmm.
So go get another job. Yeah, it sucks. You might be unemployed for a while. I would probably tell you if you're really that worried about it, you probably need to do some more money management. But I also tell people too, like my one buddy's like, you're crazy for starting a business. He got fired. He didn't have income for 6 months. One client fired me. Okay. I couldn't get guacamole on my Chipotle for a couple weeks. Like,
talk about perspective.
It's just it's crazy. Like, and what's funny too is like the housing and loans and all that kind of stuff where they won't give you a loan if you haven't grown consistently over the years and all that kind of stuff. It's like you do realize that I would need multiple people to fire me all at the exact same time, right? Otherwise, you're gonna have a churn rate to go to zero income. The likelihood of having zero income is astronomically low. Whereas if somebody else gets fired because, I don't know, boss got pissed one day and just said, you're done, now they're screwed. It just makes no sense to me. And it's all perspective. But for the most part, like, if the worst thing that can happen to you is you get fired, that's not even bad, right?
Compared to what,
you're going to be put in a financial spot, all that kind of stuff. I do get it. I'm not saying, it's not that easy to deal with. But in the grand scheme of things, nobody's coming for your health. Nobody's coming for your life. No, they're probably coming for property, and that takes a long time for them to come for property. If you're struggling to eat, there's plenty of programs out there, right? And there's people also got to get creative. If you're really that worried about not having money, you're just not thinking correctly. I have a tree fallen in my, I shouldn't say fallen, I cut it down in my backyard. I need somebody to remove it. I just posted on Facebook saying, hey, I need somebody to come remove this. The guys that were going to come do it, speaking of which, I thought that I just pulled up now, but the guys that were going to come do it haven't showed up yet. So it's on to the next person, right? How bad do you want it? There's a million ways to make money. I wish somebody would have came and knocked on my door a couple weeks ago and said, hey, maybe now a couple months ago, but hey, I'll rake out your whole yard. You need money? Go provide value. Don't beg for money. I can't stand when people beg for money. There's always, I will pay somebody to do just about anything that I don't want to do. Hey, I need an oil change. I'm going house to house. I will change your oil for an additional. You're going to pay a little more, but you're not going to have to go anywhere. I'm going to bring everything in. I'm going to change your oil in your driveway, and I'm going to leave, and you'll never know I was here. And you're going to have fresh oil in your car. Like, just get creative. There's so many. Yeah. There's a company called Bin Blaster. Shout out to Casey. I do know the guy that owns it, Casey Everest, but they go out and they clean garbage cans. Like, just think of ways to solve people's headaches. And trust me, you might think that nobody's going to buy it. Nobody thought planes would be useful either, I'm sure. Nobody thought cars would be useful. People think Ferraris are wastes of money, but they sell out like crazy, and Lamborghinis, right? It's just absurd. People are willing to spend money on the dumbest of things, myself included. I'm a bit of a prepper, right? I'm one of those crazy people. I bought a Silcock key, which is
I need one of those. That's funny that you bought that because I was just thinking about getting one of those.
Yeah, so like I'm a bit of a prepper, right? I'm like for $15, I now have a Silcock key. Am I ever going to use it? I guarantee I'm probably never going to use it. But now I have one, right? Like, people will buy the dumbest things. Yeah. You see somebody with leaves in your backyard. Hey, I'll rake out the leaves. You put out a number. They'll either counteract that number or say yes, or they'll say no. You go to the next person. It ain't that hard to, people find it so hard to go try to make money. It's way easier than people think it is to go make money. At least okay money. You want to make really, really good money, that's a different story. But like, I guarantee you, if you walked around every single block with a rake in your hands and said, hey, I'll spend 8 hours raking your yard for $200, a lot of people would probably say yes.
I agree. Nowadays, it's like, I was hearing in another podcast, someone was discussing, these are the times it's easiest to make more money than ever before. And I agree. You have the internet space where people need help on the internet space, or you could go, like you mentioned, or just rake people's lawn. Especially now, there's like a decrease of amount of people want to do the labor work. So there's going to be more people who are going to demand it, who need it, right? So knocking on doors, you might be that person needs there. A huge part that you shared too, and it's something. Look, I had just mentioned 2 weeks ago I was let off from what I was doing. The reassurance I had because me and my family, we decided to take the right financial moves, gives us the assurance that we're okay, we're good. We don't have to stress, we don't have to worry about. Other people get put in the crunch because of the lack of, planning, the lack of really seeing their situation. And when it gets to that dire moment, panic sets in, And even when that moment comes in where panic sets in, it's like, okay, if you didn't plan, if you didn't have a strategy in place or have something to work towards, like in this case, I know what I'm working towards, I'm okay. Others don't have that. Well, so then what does that mean? Well, if you're in a time crunch, you have not started something, sitting there sad and depressed and angry is not going to do anything. But sitting there assessing the situation, realize, hey, my financial situation doesn't look good. Why doesn't it look good? Most likely you didn't have budgets. Most likely you weren't managing your money right. Well, even if you might get a little bit and it'll put you behind, start managing the little bit you got or you're getting, right? Then what's next? Well, just like Harrison said, you don't have nothing. I mean, it doesn't really take much skill to grab a rake, knock on a door, and say, hey, I'll take care of your lawn, Do that, make some cash. There you go. You just made $200 in a couple of hours, right? And there's so many other things you can do. When it snows up here, where are you? Are you in?
I'm in North Carolina now.
Oh, nice. Whereabouts in North Carolina?
Just west of Charlotte.
Nice. My brother's from North Carolina. I love Charlotte, nice. Man. It's beautiful out there. But back on subject. So you guys get snow down there too. We get snow up here.
Yep.
So like when the winter comes, there's so many people out there who can't plow snow out of their front yards. I know that's just seasonal, but it's still something that pays. And if you need the money, you can go do that.
I did it as a kid. You'd be so surprised how much money you make.
You see?
Crazy.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, look, what's one of the things about me? So I lived in South America for a few years growing up. I lived in Ecuador, right? Okay. When I lived in Ecuador, one of the things that I witnessed was, and you really won't witness that up here. At least I really haven't much. There's children out there who, you see real poverty, like real poverty. Children who take care of their siblings. They don't go to school because they have to look out for them. They have to make money somehow, but you can't just give a 12-year-old a job. So what do? Man, they'll walk up with like a cardboard box or some sort of box with straps around them, candies, gum, I mean, all kinds of stuff there. walk around car to car and start selling them, and they make their money out of it. Is it a lot of money? No, but do they get by with it? Most likely, yeah.
It's all that matters.
Exactly. It's just really just taking taking accountability and taking initiative, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It just the amount of people that just don't take the opportunity to go out there
Mhm.
and do the work is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Dear friend of mine just got laid off a couple months ago. He just got a job back. But like he was unemployed for 6 months. I'm like, he's like, dude, I can't find anything. I'm like, go cut down, hey, I see you have a bunch of brush in your yard. I don't know. You don't even need a chainsaw. Go spend 30-40 bucks on a pair of clippers, or ask them if they have clippers. Hey, I'm willing to bring it all to the front of the yard and neatly stack it up, and I'll call bulk, and they'll come and take it for you.
Mhm.
Okay, like just get creative. Like there's so many ways. Hey man, did you knock on every bar in the local 3, 4, 5 towns, seeing if they need a bartender or a wait staff? Oh, you don't want when you need something, you're never above it, right? If I had a
Exactly.
if I had a wife and kids and I had no money, like I would be out hitting the streets looking for ways um to just make money. And that's all I would do all day long, is just go out there and look for ways to make money to help my family.
So
Whatever
deep.
it is. There's a million things you might not. Nobody comes out of the womb knowing how to go do things.
Yeah.
Figure that shit out.
Yeah. Learn.
It's all shit. Figure that shit out. It ain't that hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Teach yourself a skill. I don't know. Go knock on an office door and say, hey, I don't really have many skills, but I know how to clean. I'll clean your whole office for you. Change out the garbage cans, and you guys come in Monday morning. It's going to look great. Why
This is
not?
where it starts. Yeah.
There's just so many things that people could do. Hey, I see you have an overgrown garden, and it looks like you kind of planted some stuff a couple weeks ago. Hey, I'll do some gardening for you. I'll pluck all the weeds out, and I'll trim everything back for you. Is that something that you're interested in? No? On to the next house. Hey, by the way, I see there's a tree overhanging. Do you have a ladder? I'll get up there and I'll blow out your gutters for you, so that way you don't have to worry about water getting into the soffit or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't that hard. It ain't that complicated.
Dude, you know what's crazy about what you're saying here? So, the way I got into my putting together an agency was with nothing but $100, right? This is
Sure.
when COVID actually first started. Almost the whole world was just let off, right? So
Yep.
I had never been on unemployment, never been on none of that, and I know everyone was, but I refused to be. It's just the way I was raised. I just refused
Sure.
to want to get on there, right? So first thing I did is like, okay, my wife is pregnant. We planned, but this was unexpected, and a lot of people out in their asses. So unemployment is not going to happen over because they're blowing up. I mean, it was swamped. It was crazy.
Sure.
So I went up to a buddy of mine who owned the business in Miami and said, "Hey, listen, man, this is what I used to do. This is my experience. I was furloughed for a time period until this things clear up. Then I could go back. Meantime, I need to do something." And just by asking, he had me start helping him with like some, web stuff. And mind you, I know zero clues about websites, zero clue about, any type of automation, none of that. I was more in the management side, but never involved in those things. So yeah, so it started off. He's like, I'll pay you, it's like, I don't want you to work for free. I'll give you like 100 a week just so you can start off and learn. I grabbed that first 100. I put it into getting the $97 plan of Hilo, and then I think within a month I had landed my first client at $650 a month at that time, which way above what I put into it, and then
Sure.
more clients came in through there. And I'm like, it's crazy. It started really working for someone for free for a short time. Well, not free, for like $100 a week, and then that made that into something. And it all started just by asking. I didn't knock on a physical door, but it's like I knocked on, I guess, the virtual door, right? A lot of people,
Yep.
I feel like, they feel too prideful to make decisions like that. Like back then, I was making close to 70,000 a year just to go. 70,000 a year just to go about $100 a week. That's a huge change.
Sure.
But I didn't allow pride to stop me, and it came out to be a blessing. Others prideful. You could become prideful or egotistic, whatever the word is. and it prevents you from receiving those blessings because you're more caught in like, I don't want to be doing that. I was doing this. I used to be this. I was that. And ultimately, that's just, if you have a family, it's going to hurt you and your family. If you don't have a family, it's going to hurt you and your future plans. So either way, there's a loss that's there that's just not good.
Exactly. And that is exactly it. People just, I get it, but like, we had this conversation last week, which now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of sad I missed last night's call, but what's the worst that happens? Somebody tells you no, you don't know how to do it. Go work for free, figure it out. Once you provide value to that person, I guarantee they're going to pay you, right? They're less than a desirable person if they're not willing to pay you after you provided a ton of value and actually did what you said you were going to do, right? It's a learning experience for you. You get a real world experience, and it's a benefit to them. You've provided value to them, and people put way too much stress in that regard. I don't know why, but it's really not that big of a deal for a lot of people. Just go out there, get after it. It's I promise you, everything's usually going to come out A-okay.
I feel like, you know what it can be. Nowadays we have you mentioned phones. You're like the little evil device, right?
Yep.
In reality, it can be just that. Sometimes, when I'm on social media, I just scroll through things and I'm like, whatever about it. I follow some people who are successful people that just love the way they communicate and a variety of stuff. But there's scenarios where my wife would look at someone and be like, this person's going on vacation, this person is doing this, and I'm like, that's awesome. But you know what? Behind the closed doors, it might not be that beautiful.
I see it all the time. I see people.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it might not be that beautiful, or they, there needs to be a knowledge that there was a journey to get to that point. A lot of people have the assumption as in like that just landed on their laps, and it's like, no, that didn't land in their laps. Some of them who are real work their asses off tirelessly and post the good moments on their social media, so that's what you're seeing. And some other people are having the good moments, but when they go home, they're like, shit, I can't even make rent next month.
Sadly happens more often than you think.
Yeah. I always tell people, it's like, when it comes to social media, just remember, it's not reality.
It's almost never reality.
Exactly.
Sadly.
There's a lot of good value there you can learn from. Believe me, people. When you list, there's a lot of people there that deliver so much value there that will make you a better version of yourself. I genuinely believe that. Like podcasts, for example, so many podcasts out there. You'll listen, you'll learn a lot, and you'll develop to be a better person. But there's so much out there. Just like I was to say, it's just like poop. It's all shit.
It's all shit.
No,
all shit.
Now,
but
go on.
Oh, I was just saying, that's life. Like, just figuring out what's worth it, what's not worth it.
Yeah,
you do you, but just don't complain about not having things if I'm seeing you out, traveling, vacationing, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, honestly, I don't feel sorry for a person at that point, because it's like, at what point do you realize, like, I need to get my stuff together, and then I could go live that life that I want to live after I accomplish what I needed to get to that position to do so, right? And it's just like it's like reverse thinking nowadays for many people. It's like, I'm gonna just enjoy now because I'm young now, and when I get older, I'm not gonna be able to do it. Well, if you don't get your shit together now, when you get older, you're gonna be more further stuck in your shit. You're gonna do it. You got to worry about retirement and all that stuff. But I want to ask you something else, right? Before we start wrapping up. Now, I was reading in your bio, and it's something that hit home with me because, man, I was one of the worst students a teacher can have. I'm talking about. You'll walk in the classroom, you'll find me sitting in the back corner with a hoodie over my head, falling asleep. All right. I had a teacher one time walk up to me with a coin and give me the coin and say, hey, as a joke, was like, hey, might as well use this, get on the phone, call your mom and tell them to pick you up because you don't want to be here. So I was pretty much, I guess, very bad in school. What I read is that you described yourself as a below average performer in high school. And right now you're a successful entrepreneur who's pursuing his mission, right? How was that for you? Like, let's break that down a little bit. What did you mean below average? Were you just not good in school, getting bad grades, skipping school, getting into fights? I mean,
I never got into fights or anything like that. Thankfully, I always kept out of that sphere for a lot of things. But I never really did all that good in school. I was not I was never a high performer in school. I was never a straight A student. And it's funny too because like later on I realized, people say it's like the A students work for the C students and the B students manage the A students, which I've realized now more than ever that is probably true. Because while the A students were out studying, we were out figuring out life, and getting,
That's a cool
making
perspective.
poor life decisions and probably drinking frivolously. But we learned a lot about people, and I think, Elon said it best, and I watched an interview with him, and he was like, the interview was saying something along the lines of, what would you recommend somebody that's going for a doctorate in electrical engineering? He goes, oh, they make great employees. Right? Not a business owner. They don't make great business owners. They make great employees. He goes, I love hiring them.
Yeah.
Richest man in the world is telling, the person that's getting straight A's and going for an extremely difficult degree that they are going to be an employee, for, I don't know about forever, but he said it well, and I was like, wow, I believe there's probably a lot of truth to that statement. And I think that, I just think that a lot of people really need to take a step back and say, like, what do you want to do and what's going to make you happy and what are you good at? And then go figure that out. You might not have what somebody would consider a high value skill, right? But there's always ways to make more money. You just have to get creative with it. If money's your driving factor, right? I know a lot of people, it's a good work-life balance. It's a good family life balance. It is maybe it's not maybe it's making enough money that you never have to worry about your next paycheck or your job, or maybe it's just you're looking for just a great job in general. Oh, they just pulled up. So just figuring out all of those things and then going out and attacking what you really want is all that matters in my eyes.
Yeah. It's so interesting you stated some of those things with the grades. I remember one day I was interviewing this kid who graduated with their bachelor's in accounting. And he looked at me and asked me, what degree do you have? I was like, oh, I don't have a degree. And they're like, what do you mean you have? Oh, I never graduated high school or college. And their look in their eyes were like, man, I did years of college and I'm interviewing at an accounting firm, being interviewed right now and almost hired by a guy who's never even finished none of that. Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is so interesting because, I was a very below average student. At one point I was doing great. I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. But, like a lot of us, we tend to make the wrong decisions and then just go the wrong rabbit holes from there. Right. One thing though about me is that I was always a hard worker. Right. I never made the excuse. I always got up and had to do whatever I had to do. And that's what landed me in the places that I've landed. And I told him the same thing. It's like, college degrees are great, man. You accomplish something, something I honestly think I couldn't have accomplished at the time. So I definitely give you all the credit for the world of that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to hard work. It comes down to hard work. It comes to that just looking at life a little different and approaching things a little different. And you'll find great success in that. So it was interesting because I'm like, how many people do I know who are business owners right now? And when they were younger, they were flat out fucking degenerates. You know what I'm saying? And now here, driving their nice cars with successful businesses. I'm like,
working in the background, baby.
You were a degenerate just like me, and look at you. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. It's hilarious, man. Let me see. But I want to close out with one more thing. All right. So clearly you want to say something?
No, you're all good.
So clearly you're a successful entrepreneur, right? And this podcast, I'm very intentional with the purpose of this is to help men become better versions of themselves. And with that, I want to ask, what are some of your key pieces of advice or practical tips you would give to men who are looking to start their own business or pursue their passions?
Figure out what you like to do and go do it. Avoid, and sorry if you hear the dogs here. These guys are
no worries, man. I don't know if you heard my dog, but my boy just barked a few times too.
But figure out what you like to do and just go do it. I think a lot of people don't they don't take action, and I talk about this pretty much endlessly, that they're afraid for one reason or another to just go start. Nobody knows, yes, there's ways you can read books and learn how to start a business and follow different blueprints and all that kind of thing, but just go out there and go start. It is that easy. A lot of people put way too much stress on, oh, I don't know what to sell. I didn't know what business I was going to start either. I started out with social media and now I'm doing SEO. Like it's the evolution of change. Amazon started out selling books and now they sell everything. Like eBay started out selling like, hey, I have extra stuff, to cars. Like it's just the progression of things, and that's okay. Figure out what you're good at, figure out what you could sell, and then go attack it and keep trying over and over and over again, and you will figure it out, right? And who knows, SEO might not be the thing that is the final cornerstone to what I'm going to do. That's okay. You just got to figure out what's going to work for you, and then go and go attack it. Figure out how to sell it. If you're not sure exactly what it's going to be, go try selling it. If somebody says your price is too high, go lower. If somebody's, if you're getting way too much business, go raise your prices, and it'll come naturally. It shouldn't be forced. It shouldn't be something that you're stressing out about. Give it time, and it'll all fall into place.
That was powerful, man. That was powerful. Guys, figure out what you want to do. Be resilient on it. And big one, stop overthinking. That's a huge one.
I got to run, though. I got these guys in my house, and my dogs are not
All right,
stopping.
sounds good, man. You might have, if you want to just plug in your podcast and stuff. And
my podcast is the Brutally Honest Podcast. You can go check me out at harrisonbarron.com or growth-generators.com.
All right. Well, with that, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. We'll connect soon.
Take care, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.